Alright. So let's get started on this and so we have a few presentations today. Please send them on Teams, and but I do need a hard copy of it because it's just hard to grade. It really is a pain to grade on computer, for me at least.
Would you rather me print this out so I like? I can't. It's like.
But I like how you blame your printing.
That's very good. No, it was the
Everyone
one.
turn theirs in, and the first presentation.
No,
Oh, you got a
I
gun, you're gone.
Never do that.
You got a. They're gonna wanna go down. All right, turn them up, turn them up.
That's not mine.
Okay, if I do not have your paper, I will believe you and say you didn't print it out. I can believe. Please get it to me tomorrow before class, you know, it won't be late. All right. So, same deal, take your notes out. I will jot down a few things, and I just take a few notes and I write down the main points. I try to make it. You know, I don't want to be. Sometimes I might be kind of precise, but for the most part, I try to get broad ideas. But I really would just jot down things and I'll go back after we do the test. And I would take those things for the presentation, and those are the kind of things I'll add to your test. And I have no idea what I do. So.
I don't see that. You said after we take the test, you'll go back and add.
After you do your presentations, I'll go back.
Okay.
I don't make the test till we're done, obviously. What? So are we ready to hear about Heaven's Gate?
No,
All right, so we're recording. We're live, people. We're coast to coast. But I'm serious about the paper. Okay, everything else. No, it's all right.
yeah, we're still the word part.
You still working on that?
But there's just.
Let's get Heaven's Gate going then.
I'm gonna start one.
I don't know.
Today are.
Okay, the transcription of this was, they're gonna stop them. You are okay.
I did say that.
Did you send it on team?
They don't.
Yeah.
But I haven't known.
Yeah. So what's not the it's. Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
I was on my phone one time. It's just like there was.
All right, everybody, you have a job to do. Everybody, this is really important. And this, not just your grade, the rest of your life will rely upon this. Everybody, look out the window until I tell you not to look out the window. Meaning, don't look at the screen. Someone.
Here, remove your head.
All right, thank you. Hey, you might have missed that if not for me.
Yeah, I don't.
All right, give me 1 sec. Could you better get the lights too? And I lost my notebook. I found my notebook. Let me make sure I'm recording. Give me 1 sec.
I just recorded box.
I'm recording.
Box.
It is recording. All right, wait. All right, let's do it.
You have to trust me. Heaven's Gate. Next slide, please. Yeah. There we go. So let's start with the man, the myth, the legend, Marshall Applewhite. Which, as you can see, just from a few little things about what happened to him, just little basic background on him. Later in his life after college, he wanted to become an actor, but then he became a teacher at the University of Alabama. But then he lost that job for some unholy reasons with a male student. And then somehow after that, he got another job as the head of the music department at Houston College. So then he was just, having his time there, whatever, not doing whatever he did in the last place. But then it soon came to a halt when he was going through his own struggles with sexual identity and all these sort of things. So when his wife just divorced, he never saw his 2 kids again, and he was just going on a whole spiral on his own. And then he left his job at this time, and he was just in a whole bunch of distress in his life, not knowing what to see and what to have solace in his life. And I don't remember exactly what time this was, but I do remember that he did in fact have a heart attack at one point. Not exactly from what, but he did have a heart attack, and that is when he met Bonnie Nettles. So Bonnie Nettles, at this time when she met Marshall, she was happily married with 4 kids. She had a great job as a nurse, just, doing everything that she can, and, she was doing it pretty well. But around this time, she started to become really influenced by dark magic, kind of. She really wanted to be able to conjure up the dead. And from her now ex-husband saying that she soon became obsessed with contacting the dead, and said that a monk called Brother Francis spoke to her and gave her instructions. There's not much more of what the instructions are. It just says gave her instructions. So there was a whole bunch of stuff like that. She also went to a fortune teller pretty frequently, and she just, talked about stuff like that. And the fortune teller did tell her once that she was going to meet a tall, blonde, kind of lanky man who has fair complexion, and which is very much close to the description of Applewhite. And this was before that they met. And how they exactly met is that Bonnie went into the room that Marshall was at to see, and I guess they said that they had an immediate connection right then and there, just being like, hey, there's something going on here. We got to do something about it, I guess, because that's how they say it. And then Bonnie got a divorce, and then she left her job, and they just went on the road, just going all together, just for their own kind of way of having this kind of self-identified struggle of religion.
All right. The origins of the Heaven's Gate cult. Like Catherine said, when Applewhite suffered his heart attack, it was almost a fatal heart attack. He claimed to have a near-death experience where he had this revelation that him and his nurse, Bonnie Nettles, were the 2 witnesses that are mentioned in Revelations 11:3, and that they were called to, spread their word and lead people to what they called the next level, which this whole idea was developed because the Hale-Bopp comet, which was passing the Earth in 1997, I believe, they believed that there was this spaceship that was following the trail of the comet, and this spaceship would take them to the equivalent of heaven in their cults, called the next level, where they would be saved from their humanness and reach divinity. And as Applewhite and Nettle, kind of joined forces, they're, I don't know, they kind of went off the rails. They they drove all around the United States, committing crimes. A few of the crimes were theft of a rental car and several counts of tax fraud. And I believe they went to prison for.
Yeah, they both went to prison, but then Marshall got about 6 months added to us because he was the one that stole the rental car.
Yes, and actually, Bonnie was the one who conceived the idea about, the, Hellbop, which, Nettle like immediately, he claimed that and it's like, yeah, great, this is awesome. All right,
So then, like, while they were touring around the United States, they somehow attracted about 20 members who then just kind of followed them wherever they went. And then they just said, disperse my children and go find more members. Because the main deal was just being like, you are here for a reason. You are going to be saved by us. So you have to follow what we do.
and they, gathered their base of members, via the internet, because they developed this, website and they, Applewhite and Nettle, they shared it, and the people that shared it too, it was kind of this, you know. It spread around, they gained pretty fair following. So, the members, Applewhite really advocated, separating himself and his members, like, away from their humanness, he was like, we need to ascend from ourselves, our bodies, our behaviors. So he strongly believed in like uniformity. He wanted to, like, it was like the practice of anything sexual or romantic was banned. And you had to be willing to sacrifice your body to ascend, and that's by means of suicide. Because he advocated sexual abstinence, to adhere to this, many male members would voluntarily undergo operations for castration.
You're not sure there's a space to tell you the. All you need to know.
Yeah, but not going into further.
Yeah, the drowning face, that's all you need to.
Okay, hope you guys appreciate that. That's not.
So now we move on to the treatment of the cult members themselves, as stated by Ari that, they mainly got their following from the internet with this whole boost happening. And they want to make themselves have no gender whatsoever, making themselves as just pure as possible. And they do that by wearing a whole lot of baggy clothes so they can't identify what gender they are, and having short hair that exactly the same as everyone else's to be deemed as genderless. And at this time, when people started to join in the cult, there was a system that Nettles and Applewhite created called it's kind of like a buddy system, where basically to prevent any sexual attraction to anything whatsoever, you would be partnered up with someone that you despise, I suppose, and make sure that you would have to do every single like minute by minute tasks that were set out by Bonnie and Applewhite, just being like, you have to follow them everywhere you go. And if you do somehow get this sexual attraction, then you will be put into this thing called tomb time, where basically you're left on your own for days on end, just getting, like the little bare necessities, but that's just basically it. You're just punished for having something that is deemed as human. And for their freedom that they did get at sometimes, they did live in very much rental houses, and so they just kind of flipped up all over. And a lot of these houses were extravagant and grand, but they would just not let them do any of things. Like if it had a pool, they would not let them go into the pool. And so the only entertainment that they got really was through sci-fi shows like Star Trek and X-Files, stuff like that. They were literally only allowed to watch those shows so you can feel what you are going to ascend to. And to also get away from having that sort of gender put onto you, they would name themselves some different things, like Marshall was skinny and then Bonnie was pig, and they would flip flop over a little bit times. And now they're mostly named with Marshall as Joe and Bonnie as T. So just basically just putting that in such simple form that you don't have your own identity.
I think that these nicknames, they chose may be related, because Applewhite, he obviously was a music teacher at universities. And that can be based on like solfege music, like Do, T, Re, Fa, whatever. Just a thought. All right, the mass suicide. All like 200 members or so lived in this fairly wealthy mansion in Santa Fe, California.
Okay, sorry. At the peak, there was about 200 members, but it slowly dwindled down.
Yes.
Once Marshall was just like, if you are really true about this and you want to follow it, we have to make sure that you are willing to go through this. So that means like they're dwindled down members and there's about only, I'd say, 40 left.
Yeah. And a few days before the event, all members that were remaining went to Marie Callender's restaurant, which personally I didn't know that there were restaurants at that. It was just like but anyway, and they all shared the exact same meal, which was a supper of turkey chicken pot turkey pot pie, cheesecake with blueberries, and iced tea. That was the only option they could choose. Let's see. Still continue that uniformity. And 39 members took their own lives by drinking a mixture of phenobarbital and vodka. The phenobarbital is a commonly used medication to treat epilepsy, but when mixed with alcohol, it is fatal. This occurred on the 24th, I believe, of March, and the bodies were found on the 26th. A few members were, I don't know, assigned the task of staying behind to keep the website, running and to continue writing work. Because even to this day, there are a few remaining members, and you can find the website now.
So around the time of their death, since there's two people who did stay behind to wait for them to come back, I suppose, they started to take care of the bodies in groups. So then the bodies will be treated properly and put into a special area, I presume, for like how they would want to go about this. Since I don't think you're gonna exactly die with just a bag over your head after a drink. So just stuff like that. And no one got arrested because, Bonnie and Marshall were dead. So there's a whole thing that just like plays into that. And then we don't have time to show this, but it's just kind of. Yeah, that was a video about him, like,
How would they dress?
oh, they
would wear tracksuits, kind of like this,
Yeah.
and they would all cut their hair to like these ugly short little bowl cuts,
yeah.
like all members.
There's not really much like many photos of what they look like because they do have everyone's identity concealed underneath the bags that they have.
Thanks. Any question? Good job. Now I could, what do we have?
We do.
We do, in all honesty,
honesty,
hate this world.
That was one of the last quotes. Of
Yeah.
Marshall Applewhite.
It was during the presentation, that, like the last video he gave, giving a reason why he did it.
They obviously found a lot of people are so unhappy, they're willing to give up everything and watch nothing but Star Trek. So, all right, good job. Very good start.
And you ready?
Hey, John, wanna go next?
Wait, I thought we were going.
Oh, you're right, my fault.
That's not good.
Let me have the mouse. Don't touch the mouse.
Is it not working?
The computer really slowed and we're broadcasting this, so this is good TV. Got it?
That's the one thing I don't. Wow, they can already see it. I'm not surprised.
All right, give me 1 sec. All right, here we go. Maybe, yes, good.
All right, so we're doing our presentation on Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Quick thing here, all of these people, all these ladies are married to that guy.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like a precursor.
And it's also usually called the fundamentalists or the FLDS.
Yeah. So we start with this because the entire time we were researching, like every single new website we clicked on, we just said ew. So this kind of like supposed to be the community grade. Yeah. So basic overview. So they have about 10,000 members. I don't know if that's now or back when they were at like their height. And most of them live in Colorado City, Arizona, which was originally Short Creek, Arizona, which we'll get to that. And they live in Utah, and then there were some in Texas. I'm not sure if they're still there. Oh yeah, yes they are. I just didn't click far enough. So then the spiritual leader is known as the prophet from God. So he basically decided that he had the word of God in his head. I'm not entirely sure for that word. And only this dude is allowed to perform marriages between people, so he got to decide who got married and whatnot. And obviously polygamy is like their thing, which is the reason that they broke off from the Mormon church.
So yeah, beginning, it starts with Leroy S. Johnson. He was born and baptized in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And then the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints broke off and stopped polygamy, and he wanted to continue, so he moved to Short Creek, Arizona, where they had a little just a community of people continuing polygamy. And so he was excommunicated from the Church of Jesus Christ. Okay, start of LDS. So Leroy Johnson joined the group, which had John W. Barlow, John W. Woolley, and Joseph White Nusser. Barlow was the leader of the group, and then once he died, Leroy kind of took over and said that he was gonna do it like the prophet. And when he did that, there were some people who disagreed with him. And so these other cults kind of splintered off of the FLDS cult. It's second word, the work of Jesus Christ, the work, and the Centennial Park group, and a bunch of other groups.
I will make you know.
Yeah. So sorry. The Short Creek raid. So this was the largest mass arrest of polygamists. Some people called and said that there were some marriages of like women of kids who were underage. There were 400 people at the time who were FLDS. 263 kids were taken out during the raid, and then they realized that 263 kids were taken out, and 150 of the kids could not go back to the parents for another 2 years because like the government said it wasn't safe for them. It was actually very controversial because the FLDS people were speaking out and said that their kids were taken away from them and they haven't like seen their kids in like 2 years, and the community was like, that's not right. But on the other side, they were doing underage marriages, and that's also not right.
And a lot of these kids' parents were children themselves, so it's kind of like, which one do you want to go there? All right, so homeboy right here, Rule and Jeff. I have to try to say this in comedy because it's really gross. So all of these ladies are married to this guy. So he took power in 1986 after Leroy Johnson died. He said that he was the prophet. I don't think that they were related closely. So at his prime, he had about 75 wives at least, which is 74 more than the legal limit, in case you're wondering. And he had at least 60 children, which I think it's probably more than that, but you know. And he died at 92, and so he had about 20 wives that were still alive at that point, which is important. And he had about, that was not 66 kids. Wait, that repeated. Wait, what? Anyways, he had hundreds of grandkids too, which is gross.
Spinning now.
So these are some personal stories here. So this 19-year-old girl, recall him marrying Rulin at 85 years old, which is kind of nasty. And she remembers lulling him to sleep on nights that she had to spend with him, so then she wasn't forced to do anything she didn't want to do. And then another gal remembered marrying Rulin when he was 86, and he had over 20 wives at that time. And he also, another gal remembers how she had to marry her much older cousin when she was only 14 years old. So that's fun. So then Warren Jeffs here, the big creep. So he's the current prophet still, even though he is in federal prison. So he was one of Rulin Jeffs' many kids, and so when his dad died, he took over in 2002. I think it was before that, but so he inherited wives. So if you really think about it, he married his father's wife, so he married his stepmoms, and he married all but 2 of them, and those 2 left the religion after Rulin died, which I would do the same thing. And his main deal is that he just wants to control people because he is a creep. And he currently has about 76 wives. And marriage is based on maturity, not age. So, you know, you look at a 14-year-old girl and you're like, ah, she's mature. Let's go marry her off to an 80-year-old man. And 24 of the gals that he married were under 17 at the time of marriage. Again, he's still in prison, but is still married. More Warren. This is actually his daughter, so
Thank you.
yeah. 78 when arrested. I don't know if that's his age or if his wife's. It's probably closer to his wife's because I don't think he's 78. He made his money through a lot of construction and real estate, and he is actually worth like $100 million, which is insane. And he also took monthly fees from his members, which ranged between $500 and $1,000 a month. And it's unclear if he pocketed this money or if he like actually used it for his community, but knowing him, he probably pocketed it. And if you did not pay your fees, then you were threatened with, you could lose your house, your community. And if you were a man, you could lose your wives and children. So they would literally pick up the wives and the children of one guy and assign them to another guy, which is terrifying.
And there was a point in the future when we would talk about, and he had like $300,000 a month from the FLDS community.
Yeah.
So how he controlled people, one of the things is that he isolated the people. So they had to live in these unit effort plan housing. And so you either have to like agree to the beliefs or you lose your home. And they will even sometimes if you don't agree or if you're a man and you come in like too much power and people just like start listening to you, then he will kick you out and you will like lose your entire family because your family won't get kicked out with you. Like Rand, so when you get kicked out, your family just gets like married into a bunch of other people. So that was the way he kind of used to have people stay in the church. Because if you didn't agree with him, well then you would just like lose your entire family and also your home. So yeah, you just have to go to this FLDS housing. And later it was used to finance criminal activities and it was seized. And now there's some people ex-FLDS people who went out and like bought it and are now just living. So inside the life, girls usually get about up to a 5th grade education. You cannot have any organized get-togethers. You can't have any books. You can't watch TV. Warren is the president, and so there was an interview with a woman, and she said that she couldn't even tell you like what the president was at the time because they were just told that Warren is the prophet, Warren is the president
Of the United States.
yeah, of like the United States, and everything else is a Gentile world.
and that was like, a world of sin. And so they had to be isolated from it, and that's why they had a social housing, and they usually didn't, they were told not to talk to everyone else because they were Gentiles and they were just bad people, which is also why, they all have, the girls had to wear cast out dresses and they had to cover their bodies. And they also cannot cut their hair because they're supposed to keep it long so they could wash Jesus's feet
With their.
with their hair. See, and the end goal was to go to Zion, and Zion was like their heaven on earth. That, but also they can't have dogs. It's kind of heavy, so this is when you like have fun
That's my dog.
and we look at cute photos of dogs. So yeah, they didn't have any dogs. Cute. Zion. It's kind of creepy. It's their heaven, and it's all white. So, this is what it looks like.
This is the
They-
temple.
This is the temple. This is what they call Zion. This is good.
Oh.
Okay. So when they were building it, they told everyone in the community it was a hunting retreat, and then they drove their airplane over it, and like, that's not a hunting retreat. Yeah. So usually kids are taken from their mothers, sometimes like at night, the mom will just like hear noises and like their kids are packing their bags and like leaving to Zion because they're pure. And so some like mothers wouldn't even see their kids again. So they would even want to stay in the church because if they thought if they like stayed in, like did enough stuff and they were pure enough, they could go to Zion and see their kids. So yeah, they'd go with or without their parents. They might not even see them again. And it was like, what can you do to be worthy of Zion? To like go back to your kids and like Zion's heaven, so they needed to go.
It was a 1,400 acre ranch in Texas. And they had multiple homes, obviously their temple. And Warren Jeffs, the creep, his home was 29,000 square feet, so we could have him and multiple of his wives there. It's not great. So this is, you might want to plug yours, but so this is a really special bed that Warren really wanted to have. That's supposed to say activities. And the bed had some specific requirements. He told the followers who built it that it has to be wood, it cannot rattle, and it has to be long enough to hold his frame. And in his priesthood records, aka his diary, he said that it, quote, had to be covered with a plastic sheet to protect the mattress from what would happen on it. They also found, so it was an all-white room, everything was pure white. And the investigators found restraints on the bed, and I'm gonna let you put the pieces together. But he got arrested
Yes, which was good.
multiple times.
He was obviously interested in felony to have sexual contact with contact on.
Yeah.
Thank you, with minors. However, at the time he was kind of hiding, like no one really knew where he was. And he was charged with 2 accounts of rape. And accomplice in planning a marriage between a 14-year-old and her 19-year-old cousin.
And this is from one of his many times in the courtroom. I'm not sure which time it was.
And he was like, and then it was overturned in 2010, but it was because Texas had like also convicted him of stuff and they wanted to like have him have a higher sentence in Texas. So it's kind of a good thing. Okay. So 2008, 2006, he was charged with a felony. This was in Arizona. He was charged for crimes in Arizona, Texas, and Utah of arranging a marriage between a 16-year-old and with an already married 28-year-old man.
Okay, so then he got put on the FBI's most wanted list, top 10. And then he was hiding for quite a while, and his shirt says one size fits all. And he was found in a red Cadillac, which is funny because he banned all of his followers from wearing red or doing anything with the color red because it was the color of the devil. He was found with $55,000 cash and multiple disguises and a police scanner.
Yeah, and he went to Disney World. Okay, and in 2008 there was a Zion, Texas raid. It was when they had 416 children, but then they found out that some of the mothers were actually children because they were under the 18, so that it was actually 468. There's a bunch of women who actually willingly left, and then the Texas Supreme Court said that you couldn't actually evict them because there were no evidence of immediate danger of abuse. But the land was later seized in 2012.
Then he got arrested again. And that's his mugshot.
Go.
Okay, so he was arrested in Las Vegas, with a bunch of phones, disguises, and money, and also in Gentile clothing, which he banned his people, and he's kind of a hypocrite. In the trial, he represented himself, not a good idea. He was convicted of 2 counts of sexual assault of a child on August 9th. He was sentenced to life plus 20 years. And he was not eligible for parole until 2038.
So quick timeline of his crimes.
This will be on the test. I'm kidding. I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
I'm gonna talk as fast as I can. So in April of 06, he was charged in Utah as an accomplice to rape. In May of 2006, he was put on the FBI list. August of 2006, he was arrested in Las Vegas. January 2007, he attempted to kill himself in prison. That didn't work. September of 2007, he found guilty on 2 counts of rape by accomplice in Utah, and that's when he got 10 years to life. Then in April of 2008, that was the raid on Zion. And then July of 2008, the Texas grand jury indicts him and 11 others on bigamy and sexual assault. And then in June of 2010, Arizona dismisses the original 4 charges on him for being an accomplice due to the charges in Texas. And then in July of 2010, the Utah Supreme Court overturned his 2007 convictions because there was a problem with the jury. Then November of 2010, he was sent from Utah to Texas to stand trial for 2 charges of sexual assault of a child and bigamy. And then December 2010, pleas of not guilty were entered on his behalf. July, the trial begins in Texas. And then in August, he was convicted, and that was like 2 weeks apart. So obviously representing himself did not go very well. And then August of 2011, he got life in prison plus 20 years. And then, yes.
Okay, and then really quick, while in prison, like he attempted suicide, fasted, he got sick. He also had ulcers on his knees from kneeling and praying. However, the more important part is that the church actually continues because he gets calls from his wives and people almost like very frequently. And he tells them that he's not broken out because you guys are not faithful enough. And so yeah, and his brother Seth, I think, continues the work there. So,
And he got in trouble for this in 2012 because you're not supposed to do that. I don't know why they let these women in. But another little fun fact, and a good fact, in September of 2012, he was ordered to pay $16 million to a former child bride. So that's good. And then I have a very quick video, and I don't think the sound matters. That's the OG guy. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, nice job. That was a good, there's a lot of stuff there. All right, Tom, you ready?
yes,
I know, I mean, these are great, but yeah.
Yeah.
So everyone, make sure you send it and we will go.
This one's a lot more lighthearted, guys.
What is this one?
This is
Oh,
this is St. Philip's, guys.
thank you.
No one dies. Actually, that's not true. A lot of people die.
That's okay.
Not in a bad way. Well, yes, you'll see it.
I can't see where I think you're standing.
I'm standing. It's right there.
All right, let's go ahead and go.
Okay, medieval St. Philip's. This all of the church interiors are from medieval churches. I want to emphasize how much they love bright colors. They really did. Anyways, okay, a note. There's not that much to go off of here. I'll explain that later on. But most of my sources are from Italy and from the British Isles because they were really reasons. Not much is left of it though, but we'll get into it. Okay, bare bones. At the request of Catherine, this is Saint Catherine of Siena. What is a saint to begin with? It's someone who has gained God's favor. You're gonna have to like suspend this week for a second. People know that they've gained God's favor, and so they're put into scripture and you can like pray to them intercessionally. But they're used as good examples of Christ-like behavior, and you should be like them. But most importantly, a lot of them are martyred. You guys know what martyrdom is? It's to willingly die for something that you believe in this case, Christ. So a lot of these people would willingly forfeit themselves to Christ. This is important because we need a lot of dead bodies for this. What is a relic? Now, the actual like worship of these things, as you might imagine, the worshiping these guys, it's from the remains of their body that they kept. You can keep them in like a blue box or in a monstrance, but usually it's the physical remains, or it was extended to be like personal affects, like your hair or your clothes that you liked, or like your cat or something. The reason why they're valuable comes from this general idea of the garments and physical affects of Christ, which if you were to be in their presence or touch them, you would be granted miracles, healing, creation, etc. The physical object is very important. Keep that in mind. Physical objects. What makes a relic cult? My handy dandy 5-step plan here. Number 1, you need a relic. Someone will die. Get the bones. Step 2, tell people that you have it. You would never lie about this. Step 3, form a church community. Big on the advertising, you need to have a cool cabinet. The cool cabinet's very important. I'd say this is true. And you'll see that people, when you get these like physical objects, they move away from traditional like, kind of canon law, how you're supposed to go about things, and they start to focus on this relic. It's like, oh, it's a physical object, and like if I touch it, I can get like healing and powers and things like that. Step 5 is profit. Spiritual profit. No one would ever do this to scam you out of money. That would never happen. The effect on society, well, it's not a cabinet, unfortunately. The effect on society at large is that everyone did it. This is kind of outside of the general cult-like qualities that we're used to with this cult segment. This was the general atmosphere of medieval Christianity in Europe in particular. This was just how it was. And it was an avenue, and really the only avenue for the vast majority of people, vast majority of people, because side note, you couldn't read the Bible yet. So this was really the only thing that they had that was like a physical connection to the religion. And otherwise, it was just what some guy told you, or like various symbols of things that you weren't able to physically see or touch. And so that's why it's really important. Also, a saint is a normal human being, just like you and me. Anyone could do it. Don't probably again.
What?
Effect on the church scene. This is like a 7 out of 10 cabinet. Even more disconnect between this is about Catholicism in particular, so the papal office and its constituents, more than there already was. Again, I mentioned how it's the medieval era, communication was not very good. I know you couldn't believe that, but it was kind of hard to talk to people. And also, people spoke all kinds of different languages, and if you didn't speak Latin, you didn't really know what was going on. So, and leading up, spoilers, the Protestant Reformation happened. And so the potential beginnings of that would come with people getting a little bit tired of this. Like, this is too weird, too extravagant. People are like missing the point, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and they get really fed up. And so that a lot of these get discredited. There's a foot. How could this possibly fall out of favor? That is someone's action. Printing press. Once the printing press was invented and people could actually start reading things, you didn't need your imagination nearly as much as you used to, because now you can actually like read scripture and also know how to not idol worship on accident. So that's kind of a big deal. And also, most of this would be destroyed manually during the Protestant Reformation. That's because not very much of it. There's not that many relics around anymore. And so you can't have a relic cult if there's no relics. How about now, though? I don't want to make it sound like this is a dead thing. This is still a very big deal. Relics are still a thing nowadays. The veneration of saints and relics, and particularly in Catholicism and Orthodoxy, side note, more so in Orthodoxy because the Protestant Reformation didn't hit them as hard and they were able to keep a lot more things. Catholicism, not so much. It's still a very big deal, but there's a little bit more restriction on what you're allowed to do for obvious reasons. So I know you all were worried. The bones are still there. You can still go find bones. I know. People still keep them. It's. I wanted to emphasize that if there's not a need for it, it won't happen, because this is a natural progression of the disconnect between religious institution and just the general populace. And it is just, if there's not a need for it anymore, this practice just completely falls out of favor, because you can do other things that are better, I guess. Or in shorter words, you can read the Bible now. And there's a little bit more discouragement of idol worship for obvious reasons. Nowadays, it's a little bit easier for the papal office to tell its constituents that idol worship is a very cool thing to do. So. This is not a cabinet, but I think that's a pretty good display case. Anyways. That's it.
Yes, I've seen bones in various places. So we have 4 minutes. I don't think we have time. As we want to start, who else is gonna go today? Who else is gonna go? I'm so. Oh, we had one more. Who's gonna go tomorrow? Raise your hand. So please send it. Please get it sent. I'll get it in there. Oh, one more thing. Please remind me to film this. Whose job is it to remind me to film? All of you all. All right. Hey, by the way, those are 3 great ones. That was really good. And I know you gotta hurry. People did it good and I had a little hitch at the beginning to get started, but we'll get going faster tomorrow. And thank you for taking. Yeah.
It's just one thing.
I'm right here. Okay. I'm moving. Nice job today. These are fun. Fun, you know what.
Babies, you know, so much things you really.
And while you're making a baby,